Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining this City Live. I'm happy to be here with Satish Kanwar, who is VP and General Manager at Canada's hottest company, Shopify. He was born and raised in Scarborough. He's a U of T grad, and he's advised the mayor on all kinds of important innovation initiatives. And he is, as I said, at the center of this tremendous Canadian success story. For those of you who don't know, Shopify provides a technology for people to sell their products online. It helps businesses get up and running cheaply and quickly. And usually it's a behind the scenes kind of thing. But in the last few months, Shopify has become something of a household name. The pandemic has led many retailers to pivot very quickly to online selling of goods, but not just mom and pop products, but also mega brands use Shopify, Heineken, Pepsi, Heinz, and now Shopify is Canada's largest publicly listed company. It's been a heck of a year. And Satish, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
First of all, let me ask you how you are doing. The pandemic has turned everyone's lives totally upside down. And I know that 8 months ago, you became a father for the first time. Congratulations. What has it been like for you having a newborn at home and being at 180% at work?
Well, thank you for asking. It's definitely been quite the adjustment, being both a new parent, having recently moved into a new home here in the city, and also making the transition to remote work and digital work. So, the combination of those things while trying to stay safe in a pandemic is a lot for anyone. But we've been, very fortunate in the grander scheme to be healthy, happy, safe, and among family and friends. So, we're grateful and, more and more focused on those that are still looking for more resources and support as the pandemic and its outcomes continue to prolong here in the city.
So a few months ago, when the pandemic really hit and everyone realized their lives were going to be changed, Toby Luque, your CEO, the founder of Shopify, told staff, delete all existing plans and rederive them from this new reality. So what did that feel like from the inside? How did that get implemented, and how does a company reimagine itself on the fly in the eye of a storm?
Mm-hmm. It was a very incredible and important moment for us as a company, as we've always been very mission driven in understanding that we exist to help more entrepreneurs succeed in the world. And in face of this new reality and harsh environment through COVID, for us to deliver on that mission over our 100-year journey, we needed to actually help more small businesses survive right now, because building the bridge through the pandemic was the most important thing we could do to building towards our long-term mission and the economic empowerment that comes with that. And so, what it takes to make that type of change in an organization is that mission to metrics alignment. It's people understanding that that's what we're working towards, and being not tied to any one project or any one job or function that they're working on, but understanding that in pursuit of helping these businesses succeed, we have to do everything possible for more of them to survive today. And that was the message that came through very strong, very clear, and with a lot of optimism, and has really driven our collective organization and our teams to work hard and work in new ways from home, as we all are from day one, to help more businesses survive. And I think what you've seen from that is a great momentum of new products and features and partnerships that are really meant to make this ride smoother for everyone.
So people say that the pandemic has been something of an accelerant, sort of moving things forward faster, that were already on a specific course. So some businesses have closed that were struggling originally, and other businesses have taken off. When you look at the retail landscape, do you think that's true, that the pandemic has acted as an accelerant?
I think it's certainly bringing forward the types of behaviors that we know consumers enjoy. Behaviors around convenience, ease of access, direct relationships. These things become come to the absolute surface in the context of not being able to do retail and shop like you used to, but they are the things that we value and need the most when it comes to shopping and to engaging with businesses. So in many ways, we think about that accelerant being just leaning into what people enjoy and what's good for the relationship between business and consumers. And that means businesses have to adapt. And we see that even in the shift of the share of e-commerce. We, in these few months, have seen almost a decade's worth of growth in e-commerce happen. And that's because e-commerce simplifies that relationship and experience while making sure both sides, businesses and consumers, can do what they're the world's best at.
So you mentioned earlier that Shopify has been thrust into being really innovative and coming up with great ideas on the fly, and that it has entered into many new partnerships. So I know you've entered into a partnership with Pinterest and also one with Facebook. And at this moment, Facebook is going through quite a existential crisis where certain advertisers are pulling out, and it is being forced to justify itself in terms of its influence on democracy and truth. And I'm wondering if you have any misgivings about entering into a partnership with Facebook, given the scrutiny that Facebook is undergoing.
When we look at the partnerships that we engage in, we have to push ourselves to think about what businesses need the most and what's going to contribute to their long-term success. And in this way, working with companies like Facebook, Google, Pinterest, and Walmart, they're all places where consumer demand exists and where people are naturally discovering and engaging with those businesses. So the right thing for the success of that business, especially through COVID, is to help them make the most of those platforms and drive that attention towards their own business. Now, as a company, we fundamentally believe that the world needs more voices rather than few, that we need to empower people and platforms to make these entrepreneurs successful. And in that way, our partnership with Facebook helps do that. And we're really excited about what opportunity that opens for those businesses.
In mid-June, The Guardian called you the good shop to Amazon's bad shop. I'm curious to know, I know you're not accountable for that article, but what you think that article was getting at and how you maintain this kind of Canadian, wholesome, and ethical identity on the world stage.
I think a lot of this comes from our position in being a platform behind the brands and behind the merchants, because we really stand for their success and supporting their voice. Whereas when you think about a traditional marketplace like Amazon, it really puts itself between the relationship of the business and consumer. And that puts a lot of conflict between what is best for the business and what's best for the marketplace itself. So in this way, well over a decade of focusing on standing behind the businesses, I think we've come full circle to see that consumers and businesses value that direct relationship. And for that reason, we can be a supporting system versus making us the main priority.
What is Shop, Shopify's new consumer shopping app, and why does the world need it?
So Shop is a new consumer utility from Shopify that makes it really easy for anyone to track and manage all of their e-commerce shopping. So you can track your packages, easily pay for things that you want, and now even discover businesses around you. And what was really important for us in developing Shop, which is for the first time an app provided directly from Shopify to consumers, was actually trying to create and reinforce relationship of the brands that people already love to shop from and a way to engage with them on their phones. And historically, this was very difficult because if you're shopping from tens of different local retailers around you, you're not necessarily going to have tens of different apps installed to manage your orders, manage your relationship with them, and continue to be a great customer. But Shop, it becomes a mechanism through which you can do that really easily. And even if you've used Shop as an app, or I encourage everyone to download and try it out, it's completely free. It really, again, puts those brands forward and improves the way that the brand and the consumer can work with each other.
You mentioned a partnership with Walmart. That's also a huge undertaking. What does it entail and why is it important?
So our partnership with Walmart is really about allowing businesses that are running on Shopify to access hundreds of millions of consumers in the American marketplace, so that they can grow and develop their business. I think what's so exciting here about the partnership is that Walmart has this tremendous audience and relationship with people that trust the purchasing experience there. But what Shopify merchants bring is a diversity of products and brands and stories that can help augment that shopping experience, really help people find more unique, more interesting, and a wider number of items inside of Walmart. So this partnership is really about doing something that becomes a win-win for both sides. It's about giving those merchants access to more consumers that can discover what they sell. But then on the Walmart side, really making the marketplace broader with richer inventory and more types of goods that people can buy online.
Um, have you found that some of your partners and clients, the problem that they're facing now is about demand exceeding the supply? I mean, we've all had the experience over the last few months of trying to order, hand weights or a bicycle rack to attach to the back of your car,
Mhm.
and it's all sold out everywhere. How does Shopify respond to that type of supply chain issue?
Well, I think the exciting thing about the nature of the platform is it's more resilient to specific supply chain issues because there is no one supply chain and one manufacturer that is distributing these things through Shopify. As a collection of over 1 million merchants, which makes up 1 million unique supply chains in any given category or vertical, there is different opportunities and different access to goods. If it's weights, there are going to be Shopify brands that are crafting and making those things order by order themselves, those that are making them locally where they live, and those that have supply chains that go all around the world. And so people looking for a product like that have an opportunity to search and find that from a whole variety of different backgrounds, versus going to a single marketplace and a generic good and just looking for what is the cheapest and fastest set of weights that I can find. So I think we saw more resiliency there because there was just more types of supply chains and more types of merchants selling those products.
So Shopify made headlines early in the pandemic by going to a straight work from home model. Digital by default, I think is what it was called.
That's right.
So many of us are experiencing this anyway, whether we've announced it or not. But I know Shopify spent a lot of time thinking about the work from home experience. And I'm curious to know what you think makes remote working successful and pitfalls of the digital by default workplace model.
Mhm. So, the important thing here is to understand that going digital by default still has many unknowns, but our focus really became going back to something better than trying to focus on going back to what used to be normal. I think in every dimension, we've accepted that there will be a new normal, not a return to what we were all accustomed to. And the way we work is exactly the same way. So we have to go through this journey now of reimagining the ways that we work, the ways we use our physical spaces, and even the way we show up for one another as a team in a digital world. And the realities of COVID will mean that for the most part, we don't expect people would return en masse to offices the way they used to, at least until we're far beyond a state of mass vaccination. So we really have to get really good at this now. And what we decided to do is get great at this forever, because what the advantages of remote work are creating different environments and more accessible tools for different types of people to be at the table. That we can have people working in all parts of Canada and all parts of the world access the best kinds of talent, but level the playing field in the way that they show up to work together and collaborate. And so those advantages are really important when we think about building a global company and accessing diverse talent from different geographies and different backgrounds, and ultimately having a way of collaborating together that is not reliant on just physical space. So when we can kind of remove those barriers and bring that common foundation together, then when you add back things like occasional access to physical space or new types of office hubs in the future, those become above and beyond ways to do kind of unique and amazing things together. But they're not the things we have to rely on to be really productive and to build a great company.
What are the guardrails you need to put in place to keep team cohesion or a sense of camaraderie? How do you do that in a digital first kind of environment?
Well, I think it starts at accepting that you have to have a very human first approach. You have to accept that for every employee, their work and their life just became far more intertwined by the reality that they're happening all day in the same physical environment. And so if you don't approach the subject with empathy and with transparency and really that human element, then you'll fail to understand the totality of what people are dealing with at home. At any moment, you could hear my son crying in the background, or for many folks that I work with who are facing challenges with childcare and juggling kind of all of the aspects of their life, you're going to have to look at managing different schedules and different types of work journeys. So to make this successful, you can't hide away from all of that. You have to lean into the fact that that all exists. And when we do that, it really helps pull out the best of people and pull out kind of the relationships and trust that go beyond what you would even just build passing by each other at a coffee machine, because we're looking into each other's homes right now, and that's a powerful thing. And so if we can respect that and we can tap into that, then I think we can create a much more effective environment.
Literally, as you were saying that, I heard my 8-year-old stomp up the stairs, and I thought she was about to burst into the room. So I appreciate everything you say, very much so. How do you manage your own life when you have 8-month-old and everything else going on, as your work life and your domestic life are intersecting constantly? Do you have any practices that you implement to keep things going?
I mean, I'm still learning, trying to get better at it, but a few things that have worked well for me. I got a really great coffee machine. I highly recommend everyone invest in good coffee at home. I had a suggestion from someone back at Shopify was to take a walk to work in the mornings, which has been an amazing thing in terms of giving that same space you would have from a commute, but giving that to you both in the physical exercise and active walk, but also kind of leaving your mind from what you would associate with waking up at home and returning to your home and looking at it as a place of work. That's been really powerful. And I've worked super hard to protect my lunches. I use that full hour as time with my son, time to support my responsibilities in our home, and having that and removing the time from the actual physical commute has actually just made kind of my time relationship with our newborn a lot better.
That's lovely. Excellent advice. I like the walk to work. So Shopify's stock prices are through the roof. People are even talking about it possibly being a bubble. And I've heard a rumor that at Shopify, there's a policy that anyone caught talking about stock prices has to buy their team a batch of Tim Hortons donuts. Is this true? And why is that rule in effect?
The Timbit rule is true. If you're caught talking about the stock price, you owe your team Timbits. And really where that comes from is because the stock price is an external perspective on what the value of the company is. But we wake up every day to work on the real value of the company, which is our ability to increase success of entrepreneurs all around the world. And so what we optimize for is their success, is the number of entrepreneurs, how their sales are doing, what their health and success is. That's the way we want to be remembered. That's the way we want to build a 100-year company for the long term. And that's the real value of what we deliver and what each of us as Shopify work on every day. So those are the metrics, the stories, the mission that we get out of bed for. Obviously, there's a lot of information and excitement and energy out there about the market value of Shopify, but that is exactly what it is. It's an external perspective on the business, and we have to take an internal one.
When you were talking about working from home, you mentioned one of the advantages is people can work all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in your perspective on what's happening south of the border. Obviously, America is in a time of great crisis, and Trump's unwillingness to issue H-1B visas means all kinds of talented people from all over the world don't feel they can work in the US. And I assume that means Canada will get some of that great talent. And you've been part of many innovation initiatives, part of recruiting talent to Canada. I'm wondering how, for lack of a better word, we can capitalize on this moment and recruit the best possible people into this country.
Mm-hmm. Well, the macro environment for many years has been in the favor of Toronto being a leading global hub for technology and all sorts of research and development. That has first and foremost come from our own strengths, which is the diversity of our people, of our backgrounds, of the talent here, the quality of our institutions, be it educational or otherwise, and the success we've seen from a number of homegrown Canadian companies over time. So when you layer on top of that the external realities that make Toronto a more and more attractive place to live, make Canada a more and more welcoming home and border to others around the world, these kind of just intersect and make such a compelling case for why I choose to still be here in Toronto and love being a Torontonian and Canadian, and why we probably expect a lot more people to. So, in response to seeing some of the changes and challenges of the environment in the US, our message as a company was, check out Canada. It's pretty great over here. And that's, from human to human as a place to be and a culture to live in. But as a company, we're open to hiring people wherever they are. We just think for many of those people, Toronto and Canada might be the right place to live too.
Have you seen an uptick of applicants?
Yes, absolutely. We've seen that both from our transition to being digital by default and looking at candidates more globally, but over a number of years from the more welcoming and open policies as it relates to talent in Canada, especially technology talent. We've seen a lot of growth in applications from the US and all over in the world.
One critique you hear from time to time about Canada is we actually aren't that great at innovation. We're really great at our institutions, healthcare, education, as you mentioned, not so great at rabid entrepreneurialism. I'm wondering if you, and of course the company that you work at was founded by a German, who of course is now a very proud Canadian, but was himself an immigrant. I'm wondering if you agree that is one of our challenges as a country, that we're sort of conservative by nature, not in terms of our values, but in terms of our risk-taking.
Mm-hmm. Well, first and foremost, I think it's an amazing realization that the policies on our borders over many, many decades have resulted in us having the types of people who choose to live and work in Canada and create these amazing businesses. And if you look south of the border, many of the companies that we all know, love, and admire are American companies led by American immigrants. And so, I think that immigration policy and the openness to more voices in our country is a huge part of how we become successful over time. Now, do I wish we had even more companies like Shopify here in Canada? Well, absolutely, 100%. And I think that's where we each and all of us have a responsibility, especially those of us that are working in companies like Shopify, to reinvest into the ecosystem and into the community to help lift the rest of the environment, to bring more knowledge, more resources, more capital, more opportunity to others here, because those are the flywheels that really create success over many decades. And I think we saw that as people and resources kind of transition from BlackBerry at a point in time to creating such a strong corridor in Kitchener-Waterloo. And I think we'll continue to see that as other companies like Shopify succeed and reinvest into the environment.
And if I was an investor asking you for advice on where I should be putting my money or where I should be paying attention, what are the companies or at least sectors that you see real potential in here in Toronto?
I wouldn't ask anyone to take financial advice from me per se. I wouldn't say that's my strength, but I would say if we look at kind of where are we uniquely advantaged here, I think retail and e-commerce most certainly would be one of them. I think fintech and financial solutions as a whole, we have a strong opportunity with our traditional sector there and the work that's happening in technology, and we see a lot of success. I think with artificial intelligence and data science, our institutions here are going to really translate the types of talent into commercial opportunity over the long term. I think that would be amazing. And I think civic innovation. I think like we are a leading global hub. We are a global leader in our culture and our arts and our approach to city building. And I think there's a big opportunity as COVID and other things challenge the way we think about cities and inclusive and creative cities in the future, that Toronto can be a real leader here. We should all be investing in that.
Speaking of leadership, you've had a very successful career already. What do you think what's the secret sauce to being a good leader? How did you come up personally? What influenced you the most? And then what inspiration do you use as a leader?
For me personally, I've always approached the work that I do with kind of a lens that experimentation is extremely important at building building products, building companies, and building people. And what I mean by that is not in trying to invest in perfect information or perfect answers or perfect solutions, but understanding that each of us can learn through testing, developing, and iterating. And you can do that in the way that you build any number of those things. And great leadership comes from learning from both success and especially failure. And so the more opportunities you have to try things that will either succeed or fail, but come to some conclusion, I think that the better off you are and the better you can develop your leadership and influence on others. And that was the same kind of inspiration that led me to starting my first company here in Toronto, which ultimately led me to Shopify. That's the same way we think about our work in Shopify, which is that we have to continue to build things and learn from the realities in the environment and trust and invest in other people and then building things too.
So as the city moves towards reopening and recovery, we're sort of in an interesting moment because it is July when economic activity tends to be quite slow anyway, but all eyes are on the fall. What will the fall look like when so many businesses do a lot of their commerce? And I'm wondering what you think the future holds. I know no one can predict and you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think the fall looks like in Toronto?
I think the answer to that really depends on the course of action that we take now, because I think it can look extremely different depending on the decisions and investments we make here through the late summer. I think the most important thing when it comes to stabilizing and sustaining our economy is going to be investing in the digitization of our main streets and of the businesses here, and really encouraging and supporting their transition to a more resilient type of business and approach to it, because no one can really predict what, as you said, will happen in the broader climate when it relates to the pandemic or to people's behavior. But what we can do is be prepared for all the types of scenarios and ways that our businesses will need to react. So I think that's the most important thing, is being prepared and making the shift to digitization of many things, businesses, services, education, and otherwise, so that even if everything goes really swimmingly. No one was ever upset that you also had a digital option for something. So I think that's where I would invest most. And through things like the City of Toronto's Digital Main Street and other initiatives in the private sector, I think we're doing a great job at this so far, but we need to do more and go faster to be ready for the fall.
How is that going, the digitization of Main Street?
Well, as I mentioned with Digital Main Street, there's been a new investment both locally and federally into a program called Shop Here, which was championed and led here in Toronto. And it's really exciting because it's a very direct effort engaging local businesses, student communities who are looking for work, and the private sector, companies like Shopify, Google, and others, to directly take thousands of businesses online. And I think it's that type of very practical, realizing it is thousands of individual things that have to happen to make a difference. I think that program is doing an exceptional job at building a framework and moving more businesses through this process. But that's really where it takes everyone. It takes the city investing in that, but it also takes Torontonians voting with their dollars, which is deciding to support local entrepreneurs and neighborhood retail and businesses around you as a part of how you think of your engagement and responsibility in the city. And the combination of those things will help us really not just survive, but thrive through the fall itself.
What advice would you have for a small business owner in how they can navigate through this challenging time?
Going to the point I shared earlier around experimentation, I think we're seeing, the best of creative entrepreneurship right now in the city. As you see different approaches marked on, window vinyls and sandwich boards and chalk on the sidewalks out there. I think people being persistent and trying different ways to adapt their business to the current times is really important. And so I would encourage small businesses to not give up, to retain that persistence, and to take inspiration from a lot of the models we're seeing succeed around the city. And as I shared earlier, to ensure that investment in digitization is happening now. That doesn't remove the need for your traditional business or your brick and mortar location or any of those things. It just creates more resiliency and a longer term increase in opportunities. So there are so many resources out there. You don't have to do any of this alone, but to build a long-term business, whether you are a retailer or an ice cream shop or a hair salon, that's going to help.
You mentioned just before we got on air that you had your first haircut.
Yes.
And that's one way to support your local business. I hear it was a successful outing, I imagine.
A huge sigh of relief. My shoulders and head already feel lighter.
Excellent. So my final question to you before we wrap up, and you've been very gracious with your time tonight, has to do with your hopes and dreams for this city. You mentioned you grew up in Scarborough. You're a U of T grad. You used to live way downtown. You now live in a more residential neighborhood. And so you've had a long life experience with Toronto. And what's your hope for how we come out of this pandemic as a city?
Mm-hmm. I mean, Toronto, over its history, has thrived through many successive changes, both in its environment and in the world. And through each of them, we've been able to come out stronger and stronger. And that's happened by staying true to our values and principles and what makes us so unique and so amazing as the city itself. And that comes from our inclusiveness, that comes from our investment in our people, and that comes from recognizing the power of our culture and our economy and really putting that forward. And so, what I hope for through COVID and beyond is that we remember what makes us so different, and we lean into those differences and not away from them, as a way of making the city better and setting a global example for what a city of neighborhoods, an inclusive environment, and an economically resilient one can look like. More and more people are going to keep coming to Toronto. We have to solve the problems and opportunities that make Toronto a great city to live, whether that's affordable housing or transit or the connection to all the boroughs. But all of those things are underscored by our togetherness. And I think that's what's made Toronto so amazing for me over my 30 odd something years. And that's why, I'm proud to say that I'll be here forever.
Wonderful. Those are inspiring words. I hope for all the things that you've listed. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to the audience for joining us for this edition of The City Live. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care.